We cannot continue to level fund ILCs or any of our other providers without the legislature seriously considering the governor's tax package. We need revenue. We've cut to the bone. All I've done as commissioner since I came through that door was cut state appropriations year after year after year because of the budget deficits that we're looking at. This year, we're able to keep folks level funded, and we actually have additional funds to annualize turning 22 and to offer providers decent rate increases. We can do that, but we can only do it if you seriously look at the revenue package that is contained in the Governor's House 1. We don't want to cut anymore. You don't need to be cut anymore. We need to look at new revenues.
All right. Our next speaker, Commissioner Carr mentioned a second ago, but I'll have to say, we're in this House today for one important thing that we have to think about, and Commissioner Carr talked about that, and that's an additional $1.1 million in the line item 4124,000. That's one of the accounts at Mass Rehab. And what that account is the 4124,000 line item is the line item that specifically funds the Centers for Independent Living here in our Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So certainly we want to seek an additional $1.1 million in that line item. Why? It gives us the ability to reach out to more people. Commissioner Carr talked about each year that we see 200 people that get freed from nursing homes. Well, guess what? Each year there's another 600 to 800 that we're working with that could easily be freed if we had the supports and the services in place to be able to do that. So that's just one piece of why we're here today. Our next speaker and guest is Senator Karen Spilka. Karen represents out in the Framingham in the Metro West area. Karen Spilka is an amazing lady. She understands disability. When the Committee for Children and Families was formed here in Massachusetts, in looking at disability, the first person that was turned to in our State House here in Boston was Senator Spilka. Senator Spilka is going to join us today, and she has a few words to share, so I'll turn it over to you right now.
I want to start out by asking everybody to give Charlie Carr another round of applause. What an amazing man and what a fighter. If there's an issue, I want Charlie on my side. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you. I want to thank all of the organizers today for your collaboration to host this event, which is really important, and thank you for all the work that you do day in, day out to help so many of our residents. I want to thank the Mass Statewide Independent Living Council, Mass Rehab Commission, Disability Policy Consortium, the 11 independent living centers across the Commonwealth, that you do every day, and I have to give a special shout out to my own independent living center, Metro West Independent Living, with its shy and retiring Paul Spooner. If you know Paul, that is quite far from the truth. And Ronnie LeBeau, thank you for being here today. When Paul calls me up and says, Karen, can you come? I'm there. So thank you, Paul. You're a great advocate, and all of you, thank you. You've all brought us so far in the State House, so far along to better understand the needs and what we need to do to help folks to have more of an independent living. Even in tough economic times, and I would suggest even more so during tough economic times, we have to ensure that we give sufficient funding to folks to live as independently and as self-sufficiently as possible. And for each person, there may be a little different services or programs or situation that's needed, and that's where you folks all play such an incredible role. I have really had the pleasure and honor to be a consistent and sometimes pretty loud voice for folks with disabilities. I have a sister that's disabled, so it's something that, and I've been her legal guardian for 20 years now, so it's an issue that is very close to my heart. It's personal. It's not just for me as a legislator, it's me as a sister, it's me as a person and somebody who wants the best and the most for her. I understand that everybody has wants and needs, and that our role here is to ensure and work so that we have 100% of people, whatever your abilities are, to be able to be as self-sufficient and independent as you possibly can be, and living in your community, whichever community that you want. And that's why the role of independent living centers is so crucial. It is so vital. We have been able, through your work, take many folks out of nursing homes, but there is still more work to be done. As the Commissioner mentioned, as all of you know, we should not rest until everyone who should be, who wants to be out of a nursing home, is living in the community of their choice in an appropriate setting that they want to be living in, and are living as independently as possible. So get out there and contact your state rep, your state senator. If they are not here today, talk to their staff. It does make a difference. You can talk to all the reps and folks here. We do talk to our staff on a daily basis. We hear everybody that comes in our door. So make sure you do not leave today without meeting with your state senator, your state rep, who are very sympathetic. You have a terrific group of people here, but we need to know your stories. So make them personal. Tell them of the issues that are important to you, what your barriers are, and why it is so critically important that the independent living centers receive an additional $1.1 million in this coming budget. You need to make sure that you don't leave here without doing that. My colleagues and I, we simply cannot be champions for services if we don't hear from you, and we want to hear. This is a partnership. We can fight, but we need you to be part of this partnership. So I really thank you all for being here today. It's what makes it worthwhile for all of us. So, enjoy the rest of the day. Make sure that you see as much of the State House and experience it in as many ways as you can, because this, as the Commissioner said as well, this is your house. And make sure that you take advantage of being here today and every other day. Thank you very much.
All right, our next speaker is going to be kind of a pinch hitter. Told him you might need this a little bit earlier. But, as we were sitting here, Commissioner Carr mentioned the fact that Bill Henning was here. Well, Bill Henning was here, and I say was here because he's left the room and he's out actually in a meeting with leadership talking about housing. One of the most important things that we need access to in our Commonwealth is affordable, available, accessible housing. So Bill stepped out the door right now. He's meeting with leadership to talk about that. So instead, we're going to introduce this next guy. He is the representative for the Boston Center for Independent Living on the statewide Independent Living Council. He's been nominated, and the process is working through the governor's office right now, and that's Cortland Towns III.
He told me I might be pinch hitting, so I had to run up here to the batter's box. How y'all doing today? Oh, no. How y'all doing today? I'm starting to hear y'all a little bit. Are y'all excited about being up in here or not? Yeah! Okay, because we got work to do. So if you go to your legislator's office, with that meek and mild, hey, how y'all doing? We're just here today to ask for some extra funding. It's not going to work, all right? Because year after year, how many people have only been here today? This is your first time coming. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. How many of you all were here last year? In the year before? In the year before? Right. So how many times have we been here in our house asking for them to replace funding that has been cut, or fighting for level funding so that we can keep the services that we have intact? But that doesn't really help us as far as when we're talking about growth. You know, folks have stood up here and talked about the number of folks that we serve, and how many people were able to get out of nursing homes, but we can't do that without resources. And with the proper resources, we could in fact be doing a lot more. And if you look at the breakdown that's in your packet, it talks about what this $1.1 million will do, and it also references creating new jobs at independent living centers. But actually, some of that funding would actually help us to retain existing staff. We've received, stimulus funds called ERA funds, and we've employed staff. Some of the centers have employed staff with that money, but that's not annualized money. So not only will getting this $1.1 million increase for ILCs assist us in hiring new staff, in some instances, it will help to retain staff that are already providing crucial services to people in the community. All of us had some help to get here at some point, and there's still a lot of us that need assistance to be here advocating for the rest of us. If you look at it, people have heard me say before, if you look at like we're an army, there's a whole lot of our soldiers that aren't on the battlefield. Why? Because they're in nursing homes and they're itching to get out and come and join the struggle and join the fight. So we have to get our brothers and sisters with us onto the battlefield, and we need the resources to be able to do that. So it's fantastic that we're all here. It's great to see old faces and meet new faces and network, but the real important stuff happens when we leave this room. Now the lunch is fantastic too. I was at a Silk meeting last week, and Paul Spooner said that these were going to be the best sandwiches in the world. You know what I mean? And he's probably had, more sandwiches than I. So, he's a little older than me. I'm bigger than him. I'm not. So he may have sampled more, but he said these are going to be some of the best sandwiches in the world. So no matter how good these sandwiches are, and the luncheon will be great, and the camaraderie will be great, the real work starts when we leave here. It's crucial that you meet with your legislators and talk to them about independent living centers, why they're important in the community, why they're important to you specifically. If you've received services from an independent living center that's helped you to live independently, let them know that. If you receive PCA services, let them know that. If you work for an ILC, let them know that. Let them know the impact that these services have on the disability community. If you don't get to meet with your specific legislator, as was said a minute ago, talk to their aides. When you get back, follow up on the phone. Visit the home offices, okay? Because what they say, we were just talking about lunch. Has any of y'all heard the term, a closed mouth doesn't get fed? So we need to go up there and let them know what it is that we need, and we need to be consistent and follow up, because there's still so much work to do. Great to be here, great to be on the battlefield with you, but the fight continues. Thanks.
Thank you, Corwin. Our next speaker is Nick Kalpsis. Nick is joining us, and he's from that consumer side over at MRC. A lot of you hear about the State Rehab Council, and Nick is a member and been appointed by the governor to that council. So Nick, join us now.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. As Steve said, my name is Nick Kalpsis, and I'm chair of the SRC. I have a few brief comments I want to make. There's a lot more important things that you should do than to listen to me talk. The most important thing is, as you've heard repeatedly, to get out there and talk to respective legislators and seek additional funding and additional appropriations for SILT programs. I'm proud to be able to stand before you today and indicate through tireless effort the MRC's had great success with this vocational rehabilitation program in helping citizens with disabilities obtain employment. I believe approximately 3,500 individuals, citizens with disabilities, obtained employment in the past year. What exactly does this mean? It means that with every citizen with disabilities that obtains employment, there's a return to society. by way of payment of taxes, reduced public assistance vendor participation. So the value of these voc rehab programs really can't be underestimated or overstated. But I also want to say that the gains in employment that are possible through the voc rehab program through Mass Rehab are dependent upon the work that SILP does. SILP's efforts to create wider inclusion of people with disabilities in society is influential in helping Mass Rehab be able to obtain employment for citizens with disabilities. As your flyer indicated, funding for independent living centers benefits all citizens of our Commonwealth, and that's true. Helps every single one of us. Independent living centers have faced level funding for several consecutive years, but when you think about it, the costs that are incurred by these living centers aren't none. They're not the same. They go up every year. Level funding is simply unacceptable and is insufficient for them to be able to run the programs that are necessary to help people with disabilities obtain employment. And during these tough economic times, when it's harder and harder for them to maintain their standard of living, it only makes sense for the state to appropriate money to keep these programs in place so that a vulnerable segment of society can become a viable and productive member of that society. As I said, we all need to go out and talk to our legislators, our respective legislators, and seek additional funding for those programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. You know, when we come into the State House, we come and we sit down, and as Cortland said, we're going to have the sandwiches that Paul Stewart has guaranteed are the absolute best sandwiches in the world today. So you're going to be so full of energy in a few minutes, you are just not going to know what hits you. I'm not sure what Frank put in them from upstairs, but Paul had something to do with it, so we're leaving that one. We're not going to touch that one. But, you know, there's a couple things to think about. The next thing is where we go from here. Well, it's nice that we came together at the State House today. It's nice that we've had our speakers today. You know, I want to thank, you know, Representative Sylvia's been here the entire time. Who else in this room is a legislative staffer or others? Raise your hands. We've got several that are in the room that work with our reps and our senators, and make sure you get the opportunity to introduce yourself to them. Say hello. In fact, make sure that you grab a sandwich and bring one back to your office for somebody else on staff. You know, it's important. You see, one thing I learned years ago, and I learned this from one of my local legislators, and he looked at me one day and he said, Steve, he says, I want you to understand you're always trying to get a meeting with me, but I also want you to understand that if you have the opportunity to meet with one of my staff, you're meeting with me. You're meeting with me. So don't take for granted for one moment today if you get the opportunity to stop in and meet with one of our legislators that you have 5 to 10 minutes to sit down with one of their staff. Because guess what? The priorities that you present to them today are the priorities that are going to be brought to our legislators in this building. They become the system change agents. They become the agents of change that we desire to work with to seek the results that we're looking for. We printed up about, a couple hundred of these packets today. Aren't they really nice? What I would really hope, though, is I hope that when I'm looking as people leave the building today, that you don't take one of these packets with you. I'd like you to take these packets with you now, after you sit down and have a sandwich, and after you go out and meet with legislators in the building, but there's a reason. Leave it. Leave it. Leave it with your legislators. It talks about the importance of who we are as Centers for Independent Living. Cortland reflected on this and talked about this a couple minutes ago. It talks about what $1.1 million would do. You know, it was interesting when Representative Sylvia was up here, he said how small of an amount that is. Well, when we look at our state budget, that's peanuts. It's a small amount. We're not asking for a lot, but we're asking for enough to make a serious, serious effect in the work that we do throughout the Commonwealth. Imagine if next year or this year, instead of 200 people having the opportunity to move out of an institution and into the community, we have 300 people. That still doesn't sound like a lot across the Commonwealth, but you know, we've been coming to this room for several years, and every year we talk about 200. We talk about 200. We talk about another 200. Let's raise the bar this year. Let's go to our legislators, and let's talk about getting 300 or 400 or 500 people out of nursing homes and back into the community. Let's talk about the other 20 to 30,000 people that we affect every year in the Centers for Independent Living. Let's share our stories with the legislators of why we're here and what difference it makes. And how did we get to this house today? What brought us here today? That's why we're here today. We're not in this house to have a sandwich. We're not in this house to hear lovely speeches or, not that anybody didn't, everybody did a great job, by the way. But what we're here to do now is to take our message to those that represent us here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So, if you're going to meet with 5 or 6 people, go ask Chris or whoever's at the table back there for another couple packets. Because make sure that you've got enough packets in your hand so that every single legislator you meet with today is left with this packet. Make sure when you're in there today that you grab their card. Grab the card of the staffer or the person that you talk to. You know what? Follow it up with an email and thank them. Thank them for the opportunity that you had to meet with them today, and offer yourself as a resource. Because when we offer ourselves as a resource, when we work with our legislators, that's when the magic happens. That's when we don't hear about cuts to funding. That's when we don't hear about level funding. That's when we hear about growing funding. That's when we hear about increased funding. That's when we hear that we're having an effect in this community and what we do. That's the reason that we're here today. So on behalf of the State Independent Living Council, Massachusetts State Rehabilitation Commission, the State Rehab Council, the 11 Independent Living Centers, I saw folks from DPC here today, I saw folks from MOD here today, and if I haven't mentioned your name, I certainly apologize. Now's the time to have one of those amazing sandwiches that Paul Spooner talked about. Sit down, have one of those sandwiches, fill yourself with energy, and take that energy out of this room. There's one thing before you go out. If you require the assistance of an interpreter while you're doing your visits today, please let us know. As you've noticed, we've had several interpreters that are in the room joining us, and we also have a sign-up sheet in the back of the room. So if you would like somebody to join you on a visit to interpret, by all means, come up and ask or reach out to Chris at the table. The interpreters will be looking at that sheet, spreading out and working with folks. Our goal today is that everybody has their voice in this State House, not just one person, but everybody that's here. So thank you for joining us today for the Independent Living Education Day. Now let's get out there and start doing the education part.